All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining. And thanks to Dot.LA for having me and all you all are doing for the LA tech ecosystem. This has been an inaugural Dot.LA summit. It's already been exciting. I was listening this morning. So today we're going to talk about cultivating and sustaining a high performance mindset. And we are going to have some founder hashtag real talk, right? So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this slide. The most important thing that I want everybody to know is I've been in the startup game 25 years. I've been a founding team member in the grind. I've been a venture capitalist. I'm now a leadership coach and performance specialist. I also co-teach performance mindset for business at USC. The most important component here is that I have worked directly and indirectly with hundreds of founders and leaders at startups. And I became obsessed with the habits, practices, and mindset that tee some people up to be successful in the face of the startup roller coaster. And then on the flip side, what hold others back, right? So we're going to focus on mindset today and mindset management. And why did I pick this topic? So, you likely know by now that you didn't just sign up to solve a problem and build a business. You actually signed up for a game of psychological and emotional gymnastics. Right? So chat with me, hit me up in the chat. Does anybody understand what I'm talking about? Right? I want to make this interactive and fun. How you play that game of psychological and emotional gymnastics is going to have a massive impact on whether or not your company succeeds over the long haul. So this is a workshop that I do that's usually 2 hours. We're going to try to get as far as we can. I've condensed it into 50 minutes. There's an activity at the end, and then we're going to save questions till the end to see how much we get through. But if you have questions, please send them through the chat or the Q&A. Max, who introduced me, is going to help us manage that process. So let's rock and roll. I want to start out, and I don't want people to think I'm tone deaf by talking about high performance mindsets in the wacky year that's 2020, right? So let's set the table. Have you all likely heard that building a startup is like flying a plane while you're building it, right? Hit me up in the chat. You've heard this. And if you haven't heard it, are you like, wow, that's an amazing way to state it? Well, we are doing that in the VUCA, right? So we are volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That's normally the name of the game in a startup, but we're times 10 in 2020. It is peak VUCA, right? We are peak VUCA, peak roller coaster. So I just want to say, some of my clients had a hard time in the spring, but most of them actually didn't. They were in firefighting mode and filling out PPPs and adjusting, expenses and teams. And then it was really the fall where they felt depleted and, oh my God, my children are not going back to school, right? Wherever you have been at in your mind and your emotions, just know it's okay. The key is grace and compassion, both for yourself and for your team. The good news today is we're not only going to talk about mindset and management tools that are great for startups, they're just great for a VUCA world in general. So this will be really useful to your life outside of a startup. Okay. So raise your hand if you've read the book or heard of the book, Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. Right? Lots of people, it's one of the most commonly mentioned traits of a high-performing founder is a growth mindset, right? Like go listen to any VC panel and they're like, what are you looking to invest in? Their growth mindset, right? So why is that? It's because the person who launches the business is different from the person who scales the business. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that for those that have just tuned in. The person that launches the business is different from the person that scales the business. If you intend that to be you, then you need to focus on growth because you're going to need to grow yourself into a different type of leader, right? In the beginning, in stage 1, you're doer in chief, you're managing small teams, you're really in it, there's short timelines, and then you go to company builder in chief. You're not working in the business, you're working on the business and you're managing more towards long-term goals, right? The only way for that to be the same person and the same you is if you intentionally grow yourself alongside the business, right? I always say there's this devil track of learning and growth where, you need your OKRs, your objectives and key results, 3 to 5 for, let's call it 2021 as we move forward. You need them for the business, but you also need to know what they are for you. What are the OKRs that you need to grow alongside the business, right? So that's sort of what this very simple graphic is showing, that the green is the company, the blue is you growing alongside it. Now, I want to point out what's wrong with my very basic chart, right? First of all, I couldn't find on the interwebs a chart that actually had these little blue guys falling and they had bruised knees and they were bleeding and they looked like they had been beaten and battered, because growth mindset is not just hockey stick growth. It's falling down and getting up and falling down and getting up, right? That's really what it's about. It's about having the resilience to keep going when you fall down. The second is you'll see all these topics. People come to me for coaching. I need coaching on communicating with others and culture and hiring and conflict resolution. And I say, whoa, 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 whoa. What's not shown on this chart and what people often don't understand, that you have to start, these are the what and the how. You have to start with the who, right? Who you are is how you lead. So who you are is also how you think, which is why we're starting here in mindset. So we're going to hop right into some frameworks that I think are really powerful and important in life, but particularly in startup. So this is the knower learner framework. And, everybody wants to read this really quickly and go, oh, I'm not a knower, I'm a learner. That seems to be what I need to be an entrepreneur, right? But I want you to really think about this, because we all have a mix of both that show up at different times. And part of it is the awareness, right? So raise your hand or play along in the chat. Again, let's be interactive, make it fun, right? In your work or your home life, do you ever feel the pressure to have all the answers or to be right? Right? Let's be honest and real. Are you sometimes afraid if you change your mind, you'll look weak as a leader? I used to feel that. Do you believe that there's a right answer? Right? How about these? Have you ever heard yourself saying, well, everybody knows that, or it's obvious that, right? Well, we're hearing a lot of that right now in 2020 because we're in such knower mindset around politics, right? If you disagree with me, you're wrong and fake news, and I can't be friends with somebody who has an opposing opinion, right? So we look at what a knower and what a learner is. I coach so many people, and they think their founder thinks the job is to know the answers, because they came up with the concept or the idea or the problem they're solving. And really the learner mindset is, no, my job is to hire a great team and ask great questions and co-create a great way forward, right? There's no right answer, there's point of views. And if you have a different point of view, please share, right? There's no, I knew this would happen. Focus on the solution, not the problem. Why did this happen? Why did we come up short, right? The difference is the knower is very directive and telling. It's very closed and driven by fear, very feedback avoiding. And the learner is collaborative, and you're asking questions and you're curious and you're open and you're feedback seeking, right? This is what intellectual humility is. How many people have read Jim Collins' Good to Great, right? Level 5 is being humble. So, Jeff Bezos says the smartest people are wrong a lot, right? It's the number one sign of high intelligence. He says that he's observed that the smartest people are constantly revising their understanding and reconsidering a problem. They're open to new points of view, new information, new ideas, right? The being wrong, they understand, isn't a sign of stupidity. It's a sign of curiosity and openness to new information. If you're familiar with Techstars says strong opinions loosely held. I love that, right? So this is a framework, knower versus learner, and think about where you fall, right? And think about this as you're leading, which leads us to another really important mindset, which is the victim versus the player. So once again, raise your hand. Like, everybody kind of thinks that they're the player, right? I'm an entrepreneur. Of course I'm the player, right? But we all have both mindsets, right? It's a matter of managing. I've never met anybody that's 100% the player, right? I mean, listen, we're in LA and we may be in a pandemic, so we're not driving. But the perfect example I used to give was when somebody would be 20 minutes late, which happens all too often in LA, and they'd show up and they go, oh, the traffic was horrendous. That's a victim. We all know there's traffic, right? So if you're going to be a player, it's I didn't allocate enough time, right? The meeting ran over versus I stay late and I should have texted you, right? So the victim is very outside in. All these external factors are at fault. I'm powerless. The inside out is the player. I am powerful, right? Victim is very like blame and shame, and player is responsibility and accountability. I sit on a lot of boards. I always know when that founder comes in and they miss their first numbers, and all of a sudden it's the sales VP's fault, instead of like, here's what we're doing to address the issue. That's a red flag, right? The customers are slow and old school, so they just don't get it, versus we'll work harder to demonstrate the value of our product, right? So I see people nodding along. You have these people, or this mentality. So, don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution. Come from a place of empowerment and positivity, right? Make sure that you build accountability and responsibility. Now I have a challenge because we're going to run an experiment together. You're going to listen out for the language of the victim and the player and the learner and the knower in your work home and your home life, right? Because some people are the player at work and the victim at home, and some people are the victim at work and the player at home, right? It all depends. But this is a great activity to think of, are you more of a victim when you're tired? Or what are the other influences of stress that can lead you to be more of a knower versus a learner, right? Now, this is a great toolkit here, these frameworks, because they help you in hiring. You've got to listen for the language. So think about who you're hiring. You want to hire and build a culture around the player and the learner. So these are also good frameworks. I've got a lot of founders that I've worked with that have these frameworks like in a Trello doc, along with sort of their onboarding or some of their cultural information. In the old days, people used to have it in their kitchen at an office. Maybe we'll get back to that. Okay, so let's go into some other mindsets. Now, in my full workshop, we would be going into confidence and compassion and calm and positive and optimism. Those are all major mindsets for high performers. But as you can see from this image, and I'm sure most of you are thinking, you are like, these are really easy to say, but when you're riding the startup roller coaster, it's real challenging, right? Hit me up in the chat. Are you feeling that? It's like the roller coaster makes confidence and compassion and calm and positivity and optimism more challenging than they otherwise might be. Okay. So also, who's seen the day in the life in the entrepreneur, right? This was like a meme that went around for a long time, which is just up and down, up and down, up and down, right? So my two favorite quotes here are, by far the most difficult skill I learned was the ability to manage my own psychology, which is Ben Horowitz. And Mark Suster, great LA VC leader here. The CEO job requires you to go to bed every night with self-doubt and fear, but turn up every morning with optimism, encouragement, and energy. Who feels that? Right when you're about to like have your head hit the pillow, it's just like rumination and worry and fear. Then you got to get up and get on that first Zoom and be positive and optimistic, right? So even the most growth learner, confident, calm mindset leaders, they are consistently and consciously working on managing their psychology through the cortisol-inducing startup environment, right? They understand that thoughts impact emotions, and that thoughts and emotions together impact your behavior and action. Anybody in therapy or know about CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy? This is sort of the context of that, right? So let's talk about this. Let's get to mind management, okay? The most important conversations you will ever have are the conversations you have with yourself. I get so many people that want coaching. Oh, I got to coach better on how I communicate with my team or my VP of sales. I say, before we get to any of that, we're going to dissect the conversations that are happening up here, right? Your ants, right? That's your automatic negative thoughts. Your negative roommate was what Ariana Huffington calls it. Your inner critic, like tap in, chat. Yes, we know what I'm talking about. Yes, we know what I'm talking about. Okay. So here's the deal. How we speak to ourselves directly impacts how we feel, which directly impacts how we act, communicate, perform, etc. Here's the rub, folks. According to the Cleveland Clinic, we have 60,000 thoughts per day. 60,000. 95% of those are repeat. 80% of those are negative. Okay. Cliff notes is that we're not all that creative that we think we are as entrepreneurs, and we are massive shit talkers to ourselves, right? Why is that? It's because everything's coming through the amygdala. That's what protects every being since the beginning of time, right? But in the beginning of time, it was lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Right now it's protecting our ego and our identity. And what it's doing is largely rooted. It's in fear of failure, failure that we're not worthy, that we don't belong. So it's keeping us playing small and safe and not taking risks. Well, you're an entrepreneur. The definition is to play big, right? To take big risks, right? Which is why we have to learn to train our brains. There's so much research now on the plasticity of our brains. Train our brains to positivity and optimism, right? So there's two parts to success. I don't think everybody thinks about it like this. And when you think about it like this, I think it's helpful. You've got your system of doing, which is the actions, right? Entrepreneurs are really great at doing. We're always busy. But we have this system of being, which is our thoughts and our emotions. And these two systems need to be aligned. right? Your negative thoughts become self-fulfilling prophecies, right? The quality of your life mirrors the quality of your internal dialogue. If you are convinced that you're going to screw up that pitch for that VC that you really want, odds are you will. But on the flip side, there's research and science that says individuals and teams that show up with positive expectations and a positive mindset, those expectations become self-fulfilling, right? Well, that's good news. So I want everybody to think about taking this on as a homework assignment. I talk about NPR a lot. It's not your national public radio. It's your negativity to positivity ratio, right? So take your phone. This is the easiest way to do it. And at the end of the day, send yourself a plus or a minus, right? Maybe you want to get fun and you're going to send yourself an emoji, right? This is the positive thinking emoji and the negative thinking emoji. But it builds over time, over 2 weeks. Like sometimes you don't even realize that you've gotten into this like negative train of thought. Sometimes for a lot of the founders I work with, it's during fundraising where all of a sudden like they start to kind of develop more negative thinking. The awareness of the mind chatter is so important because you need step one is awareness and acknowledgement and acceptance. And step two is the management of it, right? So doing the NPR activity helps you really get aware. And, here's the deal. So many founders I work with, they're their own biggest obstacle, right? So it's like you are at choice. You need to choose to move from being your inner critic to being your inner champion. There is enough out there coming at you, moving against you, being an obstacle to your success. Don't be your own obstacle, right? So all of you identify with being the leaders of your company or the CEO of your business. I want you to think about the fact that you are also the CEO of your brain. You get to choose what thoughts get funded and what don't, okay? So how do you get better at doing that? We are going to teach you how to train your brain. I call it mind shifting. Everybody on this call is going to be a dope Jedi mind shifter, right? You're going to be adept at changing the channel, playing a different song, running a different movie, right? Like whatever visualization works for you. We are going to do an exercise called the Racket and the Reframe. So here's the jam, folks. I want everybody to do this as an exercise with me. Right? This is a group exercise. I really like interactivity. It's a little hard to do on a call with this many folks, but I want you to get a piece of paper or grab your phone and take some notes. Here's what we're going to do. It's called the Racket and the Reframe. Okay. In this industry, we get failure. We pitch growth mindset. I just talked about it 10 minutes ago, right? But the FOMO is still really real. What's FOMO? The fear of messing up. Okay. A little bit of doubt, everybody loves. Every founder I work with is like, oh, I'm really motivated. I thrive off of some pressure. Otherwise, you would be working at, Coca-Cola, no offense, Coca-Cola, or some other big Fortune level company. But that only works as long as you are using the fear, the worry, and the anxiety, and it isn't using you. Right? But there's this fine line. You're always on a balance beam as a founder. There's a fine line between when all of that is a tailwind versus a headwind. And sometimes it's hard to notice. And then all of a sudden, it's strangling your confidence. It's keeping you up at night. It's impacting your health, your productivity. Your team is sensing it, right? So this is called the Racket and the Reframe. We're going to go from negative fear-based mindset to a positive, courageous mindset, okay? So I'm going to give everybody a couple of minutes. And I want everybody to think through, identify some negative fear-based thoughts that you're having about yourself as a founder and a leader. Okay. I usually spend more time on this. Just try to write down 2 to 3. I will note if you're having a hard time identifying any, then you may need to do some self-awareness work because this is how our brains work and it's science. I work with some serial entrepreneurs and I work with a guy that had a near billion-dollar unicorn exit and he still suffers from these negative thoughts. Hi, Lori Lou. Okay, so I went ahead and actually hit too many buttons on this slide, but we're just going to start with, I'm going to share two that I hear often, because what I want people to understand when we do this exercise and share is that nobody's alone. Nobody's completely crushing it, right? There's like a lot of this bravado that doesn't serve us in the startup industry. So here's what I hear all the time. I am an imposter. I don't know what I'm doing. My team, my investors will soon figure out. Hit us up in the chat. Anybody had that thought? Right? It's so funny because I work with founders at every stage. And when you get the seed, then you feel like you're an imposter that you're not going to get the A. And I'm like, well, what's different? You got the C. The people that got the B are afraid they're not going to get the C, the D. It goes on and on and on, right? Another one is I'm not good at fundraising. I'm going to screw up this investor pitch. Okay. So you've written down some rackets. Now I want to talk to you about this other exercise, the reframe. So the first is catch the racket. Got to have create space to reframe. So most of my reframes have an expletive just because that's me, but you want something short and sweet that knocks that negative fear-based thought right out of your mind, right? So for instance, bullshit, I've gotten this far and I will continue to learn and hustle my way to the next level of success, right? If for the fundraising thoughts, I'm prepared and ready and confident in myself and my business. Okay. So there's some examples. I want you now to take 2-3 minutes here and I want you to write a short, powerful reframe to whatever shit talking you're doing that's not serving you as a leader. All right, some of you may still be writing, but I'll add here that I have my founders do a homework exercise, which is for 2 weeks. I say, just take a note in your phone every time you have one of these negative fear-based thoughts. Some look at me like they're very confident they're not going to have any fear-based thoughts, and some people know exactly what I'm talking about. Wherever you are, that's fine. What happens 100% of the time is 2 weeks later on a phone call, they say, holy shit, I cannot believe the things I say to myself. I would never say any of that to my worst enemy, which goes back to where I started, which is we have to have grace and compassion. And it's why compassion and self-compassion is a core mindset of high-performing founders, right? Okay, here's the fun part. Let's go. Vulnerability is a strength. We're not going to hear anything new. We've got a group here. It's entrepreneurs. Who will raise their hand or put your name in the chat? Max is going to help me on this to unmute people. I would love to share. We're going to spend like 8 to 10 minutes. Otherwise, I might have to go through and call on people. So who's going to be my man, woman that steps into the arena and gives us a racket? Are we seeing any hands, Max?
I am. I'm going to unmute Gabe.
Gabe, congratulations.
Hey, Robyn.
Hi, Gabe.
Hey, I was in your class when you guest spoke to Selena's class last year, so good to see you again.
Oh, fabulous. Good to see you.
Yeah. So one of my rackets is, I don't know if I'm focusing on the right activities, which could lead to my future failure.
Okay. So, let's talk about rackets and reframes. So is there a negative way you're stating that? It's not necessarily just, I don't know something. Is it more like I am focusing on the wrong things?
Sometimes it feels that way.
Okay. So what is the reframe that you suggested?
I focused on the right activities enough to get into an incubator. So I'm not going to make 100% correct decisions, but I'm moving in the right direction.
Okay. I love it. It should be shorter and more up to speed. And one of the things I will point out for everyone on the call is there is no such thing in startups as 100% right anything. You chose to do a world of unknowns. If it was all known and there was a right way to do it, then there'd probably already be a public company that had done it, right? So I want to point something out that's really powerful about this tool. One thing is to recognize that you're ruminating and taking up space in your brain, telling yourself that you're not focused on the right stuff to get like a seed or whatever. And then sometimes we have those, sometimes it's a made up movie that's not helping ourselves. And sometimes it's because we really have this hint that we're not ready or we're not fully prepared. Okay. So this goes back to, I'm not good at fundraising. Anybody on this call, and I know a lot of you know my personality, I'm not here to have you blow smoke up your ass, right? I'm not here to just have you magically tell yourself you're good at fundraising. You need to get in tune with that. Maybe there's a reason why you don't feel great at it. Maybe it's because you didn't put the practice time in, or maybe, you just don't feel proficient. So here's the deal about a confident mindset. There's two components to confidence. There's self-talk, and then there's actual proficiency. So if you're feeling like you're just not ready because you haven't practiced, part of the reframe is, I'm going to put a plan in place to become the best damn fundraiser I can be. So think of it also like that, is think of, is the conversation happening because you need to take action to step into the courageous mindset? Thank you for playing, Gabe. I want more. Who else do we have? Max, we got more people?
Not yet. Would love to see someone raise their hand though.
Oh, come on, folks. You got to step into the arena. You're not going to hear many things that are new. I'm going to start calling on people. You don't want me to do that. Right? We're sharing here. It's a learning opportunity. Mickey Reynolds, would you like to play along? What racket are you telling yourself right now?
Okay, I'll say Robyn. Rather than telling myself that I procrastinate too much and I have not been productive, the reframe that I think again that I'm really good here is that I try to do too much and I hold myself under expectations.
I think that sounded really good, Mickey, but there was a lot of cutting in and out, so I couldn't quite get it, unfortunately. But I appreciate your offering it up, because I know you to be a woman that steps in the arena and is working on this mind shifting diligently. Can we do another? Can we do one more?
All right, we do have a couple hands, Robyn.
Hey.
We got Christina and we have Daniel. So I'm going to go to Christina right now.
Okay.
Hi. So I haven't done the positive one, but I think that this idea, as you were talking about like fundraising and everything, that probably your product is not good enough, that there's gonna be some point at during like the second meeting or third meeting or something that they are gonna discover something that it's not yet there. I think that those thoughts, like, they are always there. Well, instead of like actually focusing on the good things, you start focusing on the bad things, which I think that it's completely BS, to be honest, but like it always happens. So I think that I can say that that's part of my racket.
Yeah,
as a founder.
I appreciate that. Again, I'm sure there are people that are listening that are nodding and going, yes, like my product isn't far enough along, or it doesn't have this in there, or it doesn't have that in there, right? Somebody earlier said it's not right or it's not perfect. And of course, because you're in an early stage company building. So this exercise is really good to put in a Google Doc, right? We're playing along in a very quick mini workshop here. So what my clients do is you have your racket and your reframe. And once you do the 14-day data dump of all the racket, you do the reframe and you keep a running document, right? Because sometimes you will beat a racket and then it'll come back a year later at your next fundraising. Or sometimes you'll beat it for good, but new stuff will come up. To your point, this is how our brain works. This is what I was talking about. Like, so much of our thinking is negative because it's protecting us. It's fear-based, right? So I want to play along with you, which is, okay, the product isn't there yet, or the product's not far along, or the product's not good enough. These are all things that we could be telling ourselves. What's a more positive, courageous, and kind message that you could be telling yourself that would keep you in positive psychology?
Well, I think that, I mean, there are so many good things, you know, even like just on like when you receive that email of like, hey, we're really excited, we want to continue, is where the fear comes down. It's like, oh my God, no, like instead of being excited, like saying like, hey, this is great news, we're going on a like very important meeting, is like, no, this is the time where everything is going to break down. Like, this is the real time. So I don't know, probably focusing on like that excitement and like they are actually like interested. So like we need to play on our strengths, and we do have like a great product that's the reason why we're fundraising, you know, because we do need to work on stuff, but we know the things we need to work. But it's so hard sometimes.
You just said a few of them, right? So we want really short, brief things because we're going to train our brain to remember those. So the second the negative thought hits, you got to come in, right? So you just said, we know we have a great product. You said our customers, we have great feedback on our product. You said, we know where we're taking our product, because again, nothing is done. Every investor could tell you that like they have 30 things or ideas they think of for a product, but like, of course it's not done at the early stage. So any of those like shorter sound bites are great reframes. And I got to tell you folks, people may think I'm nuts, but if you say the reframe out loud, it helps wire the brain. So I will literally like talk to myself sometimes out loud or whisper or go like that to reframe in my mind from the negative. You are literally rewiring the way that your brain like triggers synapses to neurons for a positive thought. So like this is actually grounded in science. And if you actually get extremely diligent and intentional about this, you will start to move into a more positive mind and psychology, right? This is the stuff that Ben Horowitz is talking about. Let's do the one more. We have time for one more. What's the other one?
We did have one a moment ago. I think he might have put his hand down, but please put your hand up if you'd like. All right, here we go. Daniel Archer. Let's go for it.
Hey, Robyn. Good to see you again. So I would probably share my racket right now is like, you know, are we focusing on the right high level opportunities and steering the ship in the right way?
Okay. And what are you thinking a good reframe for that is?
It's kind of like the first one. Like, we've gotten this far using, you know, this strategy. How do we keep like building on that, like that high level strategy that kind of impacts everything, to make sure that we continue leveraging things the way that we've thought about them in the past and been successful with.
Okay. So I would just say, you know, obviously clean it up and make it more succinct. I would like to point out something. All three people that just went use the word right in their statement. Now, this is why that knower learner mindset is so important, because when you're playing in the world of right and wrong, because there's a fear that comes with doing something wrong, and you're judging in an early stage company, you're in a knower mindset. There is no right? So part of reframes in this area could be that, you know, Jeff Bezos says, you know, you got to make decisions with 70% of the data. Otherwise, like, you move too slow, and there's a cost to that as well. So as long as you have plan Bs, right? Or as long as you're watching the data and A/B testing so that you have flexibility, you know, you're really in pursuit of the truth, and you really just need to be flexible and navigate. So, you know, that's not specific to your Racket and Reframe, but I just want people to think about the language that we use is so important. And I did hear a lot of knower language in the Racket, which makes sense. And so when we reframe it, we need to get rid of the knower language and frame in learner language. Does that make sense to everybody? Give me the chat. Yeah, those were great examples. Thank you guys so much for raising your hand and playing. Clap for you. All right, we're going to keep rocking and rolling because we don't have a ton of time left, and I want to get to a few more important things. So here we go. Training your mind. Catch takes awareness in the moment. Dismiss, reframe. High-performing founders. I've worked with hundreds. Here's what they don't do. They may do it at the beginning of when I work with them. Constantly compare themselves to other founders and companies. Ruminate on mistakes and setbacks. Complain, which is just negative loops. Obsess about investors and teams liking them. It's important to be kind, not nice. We don't play in the world where we just want everybody to find us nice. Trying to be perfect. Real people aren't perfect. Perfect people aren't real. There is no perfection in a startup. Once again, we're in search and we're moving and we're iterating and sometimes pivoting. There is no perfect. So if you're playing in this world, think of how you're saying those things, catch them, create reframes, dismiss them, get yourself in that mindset. I'm the CEO of my brain. I'm going to fund this. I'm not going to fund that. We're not going to think this way anymore. This is all mind shifting. Okay. Now here's the jam. Here's the good stuff that everybody came for. We're going to hit the gym, right? What high-performing founders do, they know that they have to focus as much and prioritize their mental and emotional fitness just like they do their physical fitness, right? Your strongest muscle and your worst enemy is right here. It's your brain, train it well. We're going to go through 7 of my favorite tips, and then I'm going to give you a bonus tip, right? So this is the jam. Practice commanding your mind. I wish I came up with this quote. I saw it like Brett Munster. If you're still on here, you're going to laugh at this. I did not come up with this quote. I saw it on Instagram. Your mind is like a puppy. If you don't train it, it will shit everywhere. It's so true. Yes. Are we nodding? It's so true. Mindfulness is what we're talking about here. Now, I coach a lot of engineers. So if I put mindfulness, they think I'm woo-woo and they tune out. Practice commanding your mind seems to work well for them. But what are we talking about? We're talking about science stuff, not woo-woo Eastern religion, which it's part of. And I'm not calling it woo-woo, but some of my engineers do. We're talking about brain science, right? Mindfulness strengthens the circuitry in the prefrontal cortex that guides your attention and regulates your moods and your emotions and builds resilience, right? High-performing founders are mindful presence-based leaders. That's how you can manage your mind and your emotions. We're not just talking about meditation. Although apps make it really easy to learn and make it a habit, we talk about breath work. The breath is so important in managing your mind and your emotions. Maybe it's a body scan. Maybe it's yoga, right? Like the way that I catch my presence, I'm like the queen of hacks to help myself on this because I, again, like most founders, we're moving and doing, and we need to focus on the being to align with the doing. My password is breathe 1, 2, something, 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 since I don't want to share my password in this demo, but every time I log in, deep diaphragmatic breath in and release, and it just resets me. Okay. The second one, employ positive self-talk, we just talked about, but another version of this is mantras. I get up in the morning and I write mantras down, set myself up, right, for success. Practice self-care. Okay. The body and the mind are so connected. I do a whole other workshop on self-care and tame here. So we're not going to go too deep now, but at the end of the day, many folks I'm working with and many folks in 2020, they're not sleeping well, they're not exercising, their diet's gone out the window, their alcohol intake has gone up, right? It's time to kind of, we've been in this a while. This may be the new normal. It's time to get back on a peak performance recipe. If you want to build a peak performance recipe, go to my site. You can download a free tool. TAME is time, energy, and attention management. Something important there is, are our calendars controlling us? Are we controlling our calendars? I'm a big believer in win the morning, win the day, and how you set up your energy. So there's practices there. Identify and process emotions. My goodness, this is EQ, and EQ is really the skill of 2021 and beyond, dealing with this high change VUCA world. At the end of the day, being aware of and regulating your emotions is just as important of being aware and regulating your mindset, right? I've got a whole other list of tools on that, but one of the best ones is journaling, right? What am I telling myself is the exercises we just went through, but how about how am I feeling? Where am I feeling in my body about my business, my family, the world at large right now, right? You've got to be able to name it to tame it, and you have to feel it to heal it. And so much of us didn't grow up being taught about emotions and emotional intelligence. I'm very excited that that's changing for younger generations, but a lot of founders I work with need a lot of emotional intelligence work. Know if you need that and put the work in. It's going to serve you. Daniel Goleman says that EQ is twice as important as IQ of certain levels across any industry. I'm a big believer in that. Number 5, track and reflect wins. Hit me up in the chat. Who tracks and reflects their wins? So here's the deal, particularly when you're at the early stages and like you don't have a revenue number or a user growth number. It's like you should literally be keeping track of, you're worried about, what did and didn't go right. You forget all the things that did. So I always say with my early stage companies on Fridays, you should do everybody in a group or on your Zoom, 3 wins for the week and 3 learnings, right? You get people in a learner mindset, but you get people going into the weekend celebrating the things that went well so that they can move into the weekend with positive psychology. Okay, so track and reflect wins. It looks like a lot of people actually do that with their teams. Focus on the why or the win. So here's the jam. I get this. When you're in the short term, sometimes you get so lost in the weeds and something that doesn't go wrong, that's more of a smaller thing, but then it feels really big. This goes back to the like up and down of a startup. In that moment, in addition to taking a deep breath, you want to focus on the why, right? This is like peak Simon Sinek stuff. If you tap back into the big vision and purpose of why you're doing what you're doing what you're doing, kind of helps retrain the brain and get back fired up for the short term. The flip side of that is if you're really envisioning the future and you're like, holy shit, we're so far away from that, right? How many people have that? Some days you're just like, oh my goodness, our big vision is over here. Back to the product isn't being, okay, the product is supposed to be this and we barely started and that's overwhelming, right? So in those moments, you focus on the win, which is what's important now. So you're not overwhelmed by the long-term vision and you're able to just say, what's the next important step to take, right? Why strategy, win strategy, know when to bring those in. Number 7, importantly, talk it out. If you're struggling in your mindset and your emotions, the best thing you can do is talk it out. Ask for help, build a support group, hire a coach. Of course, I'm going to say that. Connecting with others is the single best predictor of human resilience. I'm going to say that again. Connecting with others, getting support from other people is the single best predictor of human resilience, resilience being a key to high-performing founders. Now, I want to say something else so I don't sound tone deaf. The CDC literally is saying that 1/3 of Americans are reporting symptoms of anxiety and depression. So talk it out. Might be a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, what have you. There is no shame in taking care of your mental health and wellness. And I want that to be clear. All of these are great tactics, whether you have a clinical diagnosis or whether you're just having some struggling because you're in the startup world and it's 2020, right? Peak VUCA. But there is no shame in talking about this. And there has been for a long time, not just in the tech industry, but abroad, but no shame. Get help if you need it. All right. Off of that, I'm going to go to one last thing, which is a bonus. Who here has a gratitude practice? Hit me up in the chat, right? And I don't mean like every now and again. I mean, who has every day we have a gratitude practice? All right. Like I said, I work with a lot of engineering folks and they like data and science. So I have to give them data and science. There are more than 11,000 studies. 11,000 studies that show developing a gratitude habit helps you feel more positive and optimistic, less stress, sleep better, and be more creative and productive. Okay, any single founder, entrepreneur, worker at a startup company on this call that does not want to be more positive and optimistic, less stress, sleep better, and more creative and productive, right? I didn't think so. I don't know any humans that wouldn't like any and all of that. So if we're talking, I gave you a lot of tools. Everybody has their own toolkit. Some of this will work for some people. Other things will work for other people. 5 minutes. I recommend the evening. You know why? Because then you're setting the thankful, grateful attitude before your head hits the pillow, and it will help you not ruminate on all the things that are going wrong, right? but you do it at whatever part of the day works for you. Again, you got to develop your own toolkit, but this is like low hanging fruit, 5 minutes, folks, that's going to help you do all of these things and then stay in a growth mindset, a learner mindset, a player mindset, confidence, calm, positivity, optimism, all the things that I see in high performing leaders. Okay. I always like to end on gratitude. I'm thankful for all of you for joining. I'm thankful for Dot.LA for having me. And I wanted to get to where we are now, because if we have a few questions, maybe we have time for them. Max, tell me if we have time for a few questions and if there's any questions in there.
We do. We have a couple questions. One that was asked a little bit earlier on, Mark Oldman. Do you think a knower can learn to be a learner? I feel like you might say yes.
Yes, I do. I believe, here's what's so interesting. I believe as humans, and this is what science is showing now with our brains, but I believe that we continue to learn and grow, and that innately that's what our journey is. But I also believe a big part of learning is unlearning. So not only can you learn to be a learner, you can unlearn to be a knower. But I don't think that you're ever out of the weeds 100%. That goes to the management, right? This is the whole kind of point of this talk, which is developing the awareness and then developing the management tools. But yes, I believe that you can change. And I believe science backs that up.
And has there been anything that you've seen study-wise or research ever that talks about the average or median negativity positivity ratio, that NPR acronym that you talked about? Like, where do most people fall?
So I kind of made that up, right? I mean, I don't think it's all mine. It's conversation out there. Maybe the cutesy National Public Radio NPR thing is me, but I don't have a study on that. I will say that if we do know that 80% of the 95% repeat thoughts are negative, that most people fall to a negative fear-based thought first, right? I mean, that is what's happening when it's going through your amygdala. The amygdala is trying to protect you. So
Right.
I don't know what the numbers are. I would just anecdotally note that the idea for me is I created it because I like to try to come up with tools that are tangible takeaways that a startup founder who's very busy can actually like use to watch themselves and gain awareness.
Right. Okay. So we have 1 minute. Why don't you give us your final takeaway?
Why don't I?
Sure. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Listen, awareness is the first step. Acceptance is the second step. Action, right? Intentional, conscious action to make changes to build habits, and then accountability. So, if you're going to work on some of this stuff, I suggest getting an accountability partner, right? Everybody's busy. Sometimes we say we're going to try things or do things and it doesn't happen. I'm big on the 4 A's: awareness, acceptance, action, and accountability. And then if you all are like picking up what I'm throwing down, I've got a newsletter. You can sign up at FounderForward.com. I do one-on-one coaching. I do leadership management training. The thing that's happening right now is I yearly run a leadership accelerator called the Grow Group. It's fee-based, not equity-based. If you're interested in that, you can go to my website and you'll see where the applications for that are. So with that being said, I just want to thank everybody. I'm really grateful for I think at some point we had 50-ish people show up. I hope this was helpful.
This was amazing, Robyn. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who joined. Solomon says, clever logo, Robyn. I think this was awesome. Stick around, everyone. The summit is rolling on at 11 a.m.